I think Japan is an environment of extremes. There's a lot of really, really Japanese people here that kind of fit the caricature of like normal and overworked and like the salary man. But there's also really unique people here. And there's a lot of unique subculture here. So there's some extremities in so many ways.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the KoreKara Podcast. If you're new here at KoreKara, we interview foreigners who have lived or are currently living in Japan and talk about their experiences with the country, their professions, Japanese level, and a whole lot more. So this week we have a well-known cyberpunk model and software engineer who's based in Tokyo with Steffie Harner. We talk about her journey from the US to Japan and kind of her struggles and growth along the way. We also talk about how she became a software engineer with no initial experience in Japan. So if you guys like this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you would consider liking and subscribing. Not only does it help the almighty YouTube algorithm, but it really motivates us to keep on putting out more content for you guys. If you want bonus clips and bonus episodes and want to support us, please consider joining our Patreon. You can check out our episodes a week in advance as well, and you also gain access to our Patreon-only Discord channel, so look forward to seeing some of you guys in there. Also, I just want to give a quick shout out to our Shonen level and above patrons in Izenga71, Salt Shaker, Boy No Eyebrow 4, Jack, KH90, and Miku. So, hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the KoreKara Podcast, where we look into different aspects of Japan with people who know what they're talking about. I'm Raza, and I'm joined by my co-host Eric, and this week we have a very special guest in Steffie Harner.
Yeah, so Steffie is a software engineer and Instagram model currently working in Japan, and she dropped everything in San Francisco to pursue her dream of coming to Japan. Since then, she's garnered success as a cyberpunk model in Tokyo. She co-founded Startup Lady in Japan and has become extremely proficient in software development thanks to the help of code Chrysalis. So Steffie, can you give us a quick background of who you are and where you're at today?
Oh, thank you for the lovely intro. I like how you start this, podcast. Like my co-host said, I'm Steffie Harner. I am a freelance cyberpunk influencer and software developer in Tokyo. I've been living here for about 4.5 years now. Well, time has really flown by, and I've done quite a few things since moving to Japan. But now I've found a really big interest in software and technology and dove deep and got into software engineering. And yeah, just here I am now, kind of in the age of coronavirus, just building software and occasionally going out to do some influencer and modeling jobs. And yeah, how's that for a little bit of an intro?
Perfect. So I guess we can get right started with, so how did you first become interested in Japan?
How did I become interested in Japan? All right, real talk here. So growing up, I was pretty much an otaku. I'm not even going to hide it. Like, watched exclusively anime and manga growing up. I was one of those kids who'd spend all of their allowance on manga every week. And I kind of was a little snobby about it. It's like I didn't want to watch anything with real people in it, just exclusively animations. And in many ways, I romanticized Japan. And so living here now is kind of like realizing my childhood dream, and as a kid, I was pretty much otaku, just anime, manga. But since then, I've kind of developed into more of a weeb. So more into like Japanese culture, namely food culture, like izakaya and wagashi. just looking at social aspects of Japan and just how society works here. Living as a foreigner, I'm pretty aware of that. Here, like, I'm never going to be accustomed to the Japanese lifestyle in the way that is, inherently Japanese. I'm always going to be a foreigner here. But in terms of like living a prosperous life in Japan, it's definitely possible. And there's so many other foreigners like myself that have been here for a while and aren't planning on going back anytime soon.
Yeah, I respect the weeb life. It's definitely a way of life to go. So I guess rewinding a little bit. So you were actually in San Francisco, right? And then you kind of decided to drop everything and move to Japan. So it was kind of initially like your childhood fascination, but how did you kind of transition into a place where you wanted to live?
Right. Yeah. It wasn't really a long-term plan at all. I went to University of San Francisco. I studied sports science and psychology. Originally, I wanted to get into med school, right? That was the plan. And during my senior year, after taking all of my pre-med requirements, I kind of just told myself, like, I don't want to be part of this institution that is more about treating symptoms rather than healing lifestyles. And I got into health tech instead. So after graduating, I was working at a health tech startup doing digital marketing and content creation for them. And I actually really loved my company, but it came to a point, especially like with the San Francisco tech life culture, where it's really easy to fall into a place of overwork and the grind, and you're just kind of obsessed with productivity and pleasing clients and just success, right? So I fell into a little bit of a dark place where I kind of started hating tech and my life in San Francisco, and I had just came back from like an Asia tour from one of my vacations, and the idea of, hey, I have the resources right now from just working so much and not having so much time to spend my money to move to Japan. Like, I wonder what it's like. And I started researching on how to get here, and found out, there's always there's a language school option. I can come here, move. There's usually the things that people do here when they don't have any path to living in Japan is English teaching, becoming a recruiter, or working in entertainment. That I decided, like, it's probably a good foundation if I go to a language school and get a solid foundation, or, some kind of foundation in Japanese before, planting here, I suppose. And so I think it was a little bit of 6 months of ideation that led to a concrete plan of just moving to Japan.
So did you go to a language school in the beginning?
I did, yeah. So I went through this company called Gogo Nihon, which specializes in bringing foreigners here in different routes, mostly language school. And I went to language school for about a year, and it was a good foundation, I'd say. It wasn't the best. It was more like reading and writing rather than speaking. But yeah, it did bring me here. I used it as a stepping stone, and I'm super happy I did it. I think ever since moving to Japan, my life has changed so much for the better.
So the language school got you a visa initially, right? So I guess what was the next step transitioning from going to a language school to stay in Japan?
Yeah, okay. So for language schools, if y'all don't know, you're allowed a max of 2 years on the student visa. If it's a university, of course, it's however long the university is hosting you. But language school is a max of 2 years. And I went to language school for a year and decided, like, I think it's about time to work. Like, I have enough Japanese to get by. And I ended up finding this really, really interesting job that is a licensee of Disney. So I was singing kind of Disney-esque songs to children on the phone.
Oh, wow.
On the phone.
Yeah. As a method of teaching English.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I wouldn't consider this like a teaching job by any means. It was more like a entertainment job, because I'm literally singing to these children. Yeah.
Never underestimate the power of English in Japan.
Yeah. It's
how does
fascinating.
that work? Like, they just call you and you just start singing?
Yeah. So they would call, and we have this whole intro, like, oh, this is telephone English. Yeah, what song? It's kind of like a human jukebox type of thing. And they request a couple of songs, and you, at their whim, bust it out. And the child is pleased and is singing along with you sometimes. And and then you hang up. Yeah, it was quite a job. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm doing a podcast, not that, because KoreKara Jukebox would not work out. I'll tell you that right now.
So did that company actually give you a visa sponsorship?
Not exactly, actually. So I had to actually figure that out myself, because it's more of like a contract position. So there's a way to host your visa without having a company host you, with just proving to the Japanese government that you're able to make a certain amount of money. Yeah, and it's about $3,500 a month, and that you've paid your taxes. And so I took that on as like a main source of income after I found that gig. And I was also doing freelance modeling and some influencer jobs on the side, and was able to start collecting enough money to, go to immigration and have the papers to switch over from a student visa to a working visa.
I see. And how did you actually get into those modeling gigs? Did you just see like a listing, or you had to go through an agency? Because Japan works a lot differently, right?
Yeah. So, I think this is becoming more common these days with the widespread use of social media. But I was just sharing a lot of my life online on Facebook and on Instagram, mostly to just show my friends and family what I was up to, actually. And then I started getting reached out to by some photographers asking for a model. And just started agreeing to meet people. Because it's a bit like when you first come to Japan, it's kind of hard to meet other foreigners if you don't know anyone already. Because I had no friends, family, or even acquaintances here when I first moved here. So I went out to shoot, basically, and met photographers and started building a portfolio. And after just continually posting it on my Instagram, I got reached out by a few freelance agencies. And that's where I started getting my first paid gigs.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, my initial trip to Japan was a big YOLO, so completely understand.
YOLO.
Gotta bring the slang to Japan. That's what the KoreKara podcast is all about. I mean, new goal starting today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess really living in Japan, completely different country. You kind of romanticize it like you were saying earlier, but once you were actually there, did you run into any cultural barriers or culture shocks that kind of threw you for a loop?
Let's see. Okay. I guess like, so moving here, to start that off, I'm moving here. I felt like I was on a high, just like everything made me so excited. I think some of the things that I said was like, it's literally like the anime. Like I walk into a grocery store and I'm like, whoa, it's exactly like how I imagined it to be, type of thing. And so it was mostly, I think I'd say it was 90% that, just being excited all the time. But I think one of the first negative encounters I've had being a foreigner in Japan is that my first summer coming here, I had really long hair at the time, and I was on the train. It was super hot. I was in one of the low air conditioned cars. I didn't know that there was a difference at the time. And I had my hair up, and this old Japanese grandmother, she took my ponytail and she just tugged it. And I was in shock. Yeah, I was like, whoa, what's going on? I thought maybe I had like hit her in the face accidentally with like my long hair. But I looked back and she was just like shaking her head vigorously at me. And I was so confused. And then I realized she was telling me to put down my ponytail. Why? Because so I actually have a tattoo on the back of my neck. And I believe, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure this must be it. I believe she was just kind of insinuating that it's improper for me to show that. And yeah, I actually took down, without a word, like I took down my hair and then she looked away. And I was just like, whoa. Because of course that would never in a million years happen like in like San Francisco, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nobody would bat an eye.
Yeah. But
did you ever get in trouble for that tattoo? Like any other instances?
No. That was just the one time. There's when you go signing up for like gyms here, they talk about how you need to hide tattoos, or some gyms don't even allow it. Bathhouses too, like they're pretty tattoo taboo. When I first got here, recently I've noticed like the past 2 years they're lining up these laws, and it was in preparation for the 2020 Olympics, right? I don't think that Japan wanted that bad press. But yeah, you have to have kind of a dose of empathy too, because culturally, you have to understand that Japan associates tattoos like this with like the Yakuza. Yeah, and so like that association is still very much alive in the older generations. Like they see it and they have fear, it's like that's what it's associated with. And so, when that incident happened to me, I was very shocked, but I wouldn't say I was mad, I was just like surprised and thrown off guard. But I kind of I understood where it came from. So it's knowing that it's easy to kind of forgive that person. So yeah.
Yeah, at least you got to be a Yakuza for a couple of minutes.
Right, I'm
take in the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess like prior to this, we were talking a little bit about your modeling and your phone in on the karaoke. Well, not karaoke, but teaching kids English through singing. So I guess were those your main gigs kind of going in? Because you did have a big development that you did start up, but prior to that, were those the only jobs, or did you have more jobs kind of cycling through to, I guess, keep the ends meeting?
Those were more than enough for me, actually. Like I was kind of, I suppose, like since coming to Japan, because I had no concrete plans, it's kind of just been a large experiment. Like, oh, okay, well, I became like a yes person after moving here because I'm just like open to whatever can happen. Everything is new. But I was a little overwhelmed with the opportunities that were coming at a certain point. And the singing gig, you can work full-time hours at this job because they have a large client base. But I didn't really like singing for 30 hours a week or more. Like I think 30 was like my max.
Tiring.
Yeah, and then it's like I need to challenge myself with something, with a different skill set. Yeah.
Was like, I guess, that working environment ever stressful at all in any sense? I guess there's this notorious kind of image of Japan having a very hard work life, but it's also like really dependent on where you work.
Right.
So did you kind of feel that you were in that, or did you have like a different experience?
Yeah, I would say that I had a very different experience, but I also have to say that I haven't been in a traditional Japanese company. I've had a very non-traditional life since moving to Tokyo. So I can't really speak on that so much, but I do have a lot of friends and a lot of acquaintances that have been in Japanese companies, and it's nothing but horrible things. But it's also, yeah, I think those kind of stand out because if you are placed in a bad company like that, like the negative experiences, like they stick out and then they're prolonged, and like you need to focus on them and let it out and like tell people. But I there's a lot of positive experiences that happen, and those are the ones that aren't, so talked about, I think, because I think we're as people, we're always kind of obsessed with improving. And so we always bring up things that are problems and that are bad. But in terms of like, my life right now, there's a lot of good things I can say about it. Even my life when I first came to Japan, like, yeah, it was tough. But I can choose to focus on like my successes rather than like the things that need to be improved on. And so I want to bring that up as to point out that, yes, those companies do exist in Japan, but that doesn't mean that every company in Japan is like that. Like there is a wide selection of opportunities, and, in every country, there's a place, there's a dark side and there's a light side, and there's companies that are doing well and like treat their employees, fairly. And you could have good opportunities to grow in your career or just learn something new or, think out of the box. And maybe those stories aren't being highlighted enough.
Yeah, wise words. Everyone should go and highlight that right now. I think that's great words of advice right there by Steffie, especially not even in Japan, but any country. Keep that in mind. And I guess kind of going on the whole aspect of, I guess, more so on Japan, and you mentioned empathy before. This entire notion in Japan of kind of this, like, again, another point that you mentioned was that you're always going to be a foreigner in Japan, and that whole stigma of being a foreigner in Japan. So I guess kind of along the idea where you kind of got called out for having a tattoo on the train, did you ever have like an instance where people made you feel like you didn't belong, or do you kind of just roll with the flow, do you, and make the most out of everything like you were saying?
That is a good question. I don't want to get meta here, but yeah, I can't really think of a time where I really felt that way. Like everything in Japan, I think Japan is an environment of extremes. There's a lot of really, really Japanese people here that kind of fit the caricature of like normal and overworked and like the salary man. But there's also really unique people here, and there's a lot of unique subculture here. So there's some extremities in so many ways, like gyaru and like really interesting high fashion, and like people who aren't afraid to go against the grain. And just walking around in the cities, especially like in Shibuya or Harajuku, you can see them everywhere. You know, maybe I'm one of them, right? By the way that I dress sometimes when I do go out these days. And yeah, I think just seeing that for yourself, like when you're out here, makes you comfortable in being yourself. I think also part of Japanese culture is they don't really call you out. You know, it's like,
oh yeah,
like you can kind of do what you want as long as you're not being like a public disturbance, right? Even if you are a little bit of a public disturbance, like maybe they'll be judging you, but they're not going to tell you like, hey, stop that. Whereas like if you're kind of causing a ruckus in the US, like people do not hesitate to speak up. And in a way, like that, this type of harmony culture in Japan, like lets people do what they want to do and live their life the way they want to. Just as long as you're not disturbing the peace too much. And I do like that respect for privacy.
Yeah, it's a wonderful aspect. And I guess now, really moving on, at this point, you've really acclimated yourself into Japan, worked some jobs there, got your working visa. But around this time, you actually started up something even bigger with some of your coworkers, right?
Yeah, actually, so they weren't my coworkers.
Okay.
But
your friends
of friends that I ended up getting connected to. So one of my friends, Amy, her roommate was, I had done an internship at Kaiser Permanente back in the Bay Area. And she connected me to Amy. And Amy is an entrepreneur here. She has a VR e-commerce company. And she was asking me, because she knew I did a lot of video and kind of media stuff, if I would help her on this female video project that she wanted to start, where she wanted to showcase some cool female entrepreneurs that she knew and tell their story online. And because I'm such a yes person, I was like, sure, let's try it. Like I'm all about social impact as well. And I love, meeting strong women, because it inspires me to, also live by those values. And yeah, so Startup Lady, that is how it started. It was a video project. We were originally trying to do YouTube videos. But eventually we decided like, so we made our first video, and we thought like, why don't we just host an event to make a little bit of money? Like we'll get this. We had a friend who was distributing wine, and so we asked them to sponsor us. And so we were just gonna, serve drinks and like a charge at the door, and bring female entrepreneurs here and promote on Facebook and see just like who shows up. And we had I think we had 20 people come to the event, and we were pretty surprised actually that there was any interest at all. And then we just kept doing that. The first event was kind of a mess. We had no idea what we were doing or what we were getting ourselves into. Like there was so much disorder, and we didn't even assign people to collect money, and but that's really how you learn. Like you learn by doing. Anyway, so that's like the long story of how we first started, but really one thing led to another, and we got better at hosting events. And we had this really one of our most successful events, like in the first 6 months of starting, where we invited 8 different female speakers to kind of share their story at a club called One Oak. I don't know if you know, in Roppongi. And we had, I think, over 100 people that came up to the event. And it was awesome. And the headliner of that event was this woman named Yan Fan, who is the CTO of a coding bootcamp called Chrysalis. Yeah, and her story kind of blew me away. Like she had a non-traditional background and joined a coding bootcamp and became a software engineer and then became an entrepreneur. And I think I see myself as a really open-minded person, but I had this unconscious bias of what a software engineer is in my mind, and seeing her speak in front of me kind of broke that stigma. And I thought, like, hey, like, I kind of want to try. Like, I want to try this coding thing too. So I ended up signing up for one of her classes, an intro to programming. And I actually loved it. I got really into it. I mean, I put in the work, but I was exceeding my assignment, surpassing like the requirements for my assignments. And I just thought, like, why don't I join their full-time boot camp? Like, I feel like it's calling me, you know?
You can hear it.
What was the schedule like for their full-time boot camp?
So basically it's a 3-month coding boot camp, and you really don't have time to do anything else. So I literally just put my life on pause to dive into software. And so did, a bunch of other of my cohort mates.
So I guess then the structure, you kind of have this cohort along with you going through the course at the same time with instructors teaching you? Yeah.
So it's a 3-month boot camp. In the first half of the boot camp, it's all like content consuming. So it brings you kind of full stack. And I don't know if people here are familiar with software development. So you have like the core concepts of computer science in the first few weeks, and then they take you more into front-end web development, like design and like building components of like a web page and stuff like that. And then they bring you to the back end, which is like databases, data and the server. And then you get into tying it all together and making a full stack application. And then the later half is just projects. And that is a slew of solo projects and group projects. So basically, lots of hackathons, lots of just
grinding it out,
app pitching and not sleeping and staring into a computer screen, and just trying to.
What were some of your favorite projects that you worked on?
Some of my favorite projects. Oh man, do I even remember all the things I did during those 3 months? So I made I think one of my favorite projects was I decided for my solo polyglottal project, which is a week where you have to self-teach yourself a language other than JavaScript. And this whole bootcamp is just JavaScript, right? So it came to the point where I'm like, okay, I want to try building a game in C# and see how that goes. So there's a SDK called Unity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you familiar? And I am really into vaporwave subculture and art. So I wanted to make a vaporwave experience with a sprite called a cat snake, which is my cohort's mascot. So it's a very alternative game. There's exploding bobas and lots of vaporwave Windows 95 aesthetics.
I respect the boba.
Is the game actually live for people to check out?
I do have a GitHub repository where you can download it. It's open source.
All right, well, that will be in the description, guys. Be sure to check it out.
Yeah, okay, so that's one of my less serious, more like I want to try this because it sounds fun projects. I also decided I wanted to make an Instagram filter, which I guess is also half serious, half for fun. But like, I had to basically make a 3D object in Blender. So I did that first, and then I had to import it into Facebook's software called Spark AR and animate it with code. So that was a journey that took a little bit of time as well.
You made a YouTube video of that, right?
I did, yeah, and I gave a tech talk on it as well. So that was nice. Extremely stressful. I think I'm pretty sure I broke down that week from stress, but at least I did it. Like now it's on YouTube.
Yeah, you did it. You got it. And I mean, I guess speaking to stress, like you mentioned before, like this is a full-time thing. Like it's not anything that's easy to do unless you're fully committed. So were there any points where, any like low points where you felt maybe like stressed out, like you were saying, but maybe a point where you're like, can I do this or can I not do this? Like a big turning point where you kind of got yourself everything all together?
Yeah, I think there was twice where I did want to quit. And I let my instructors know. I talked to Yan and I was like, I don't know if I'm at the technical capacity to, take in all of this and do all these projects. I don't know if I can withstand this. And I was basically told that I'm doing fine and that I'm doing better than I think I am, and I'm being way too hard on myself. It didn't feel like that. It felt like I knew nothing during this boot camp. But I just trusted them. And I really did feel the like overwhelming support from the staff and the instructors. And from my peers, like the people who also gave up everything to do this software journey with me. Like everyone wanted me to stay and kind of highlighted the things that I was doing good at when I was just putting myself down and, at the point of almost giving up. It was tough and there's a lot of tears, but I did decide to stick with it. And I'm so glad I did,
Yeah, I feel like that's like a big life lesson to anyone. Like have a good support group and make sure if you have a passion towards something, you have a newfound interest, stick through it for at least a while. Give yourself some time. And if it doesn't work out after that time period, you can do what you want. But really go through, even in the tough times, if you have that support group, really come through. And I mean, that's always like amazing to hear those stories and hear that you have such amazing peers in your cohort, have great instructors in Code Chrysalis. So, I mean, now they're, I guess, not only your peers, but now they're going up into the software development field with you, right? So that's an even greater feeling when now you have people in the field with you going up, right?
Yeah.
And I guess for you personally, how long did it take to find a job in software development after taking this 3-month boot camp?
Right. So for me and another one of my cohort mates, we were hired before the boot camp ended. Oh, so nice. I actually didn't really have an opportunity to deal with the job hunt myself. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm the best person to speak about it, but I'm always like with open communication with my cohort mates.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's an up and down journey, but there came a point, I think it was like 2 or 3 months after we all graduated, we had a little of a reunion because we got super close, and the majority of us had already found jobs at that point, which is really nice. Yeah, it was super nice to celebrate after just being stressed out for so long.
I can imagine. And I guess you mentioned like the ups and downs, but speaking of the ups, like what was the most rewarding point in that journey?
Oh, the rewarding point. I mean, there's always like such a good feeling when you're building an app and you've tied it all together, the front end, back end, and you're deploying. So you're making it live, and you're just unsure, like, is it going to build? Like, is it actually going to like result in a website, or is there something wrong? Like, there must be something wrong. And then when you see it live, you're just like, oh, such a breath of, it's such a relief. So there was those moments, especially when you've put so much work into like the back end, and you've put so much work into the application, and you can finally see like your work being fruitful. And then just like pitching, like those presentations where you're pitching the app to the instructors or to the public, because we did have public facing talks as well. And like you get like such a positive reaction, or like people come and congratulate you after the talk, and they say like, oh, how did you do this? Or like, I want to talk to you more about this app that you made, or like, yeah, like that feels so good. And it makes it really builds confidence too. It really makes you realize like, well, I can do anything. Like if I really put my mind to it, I can make a app with utility that people will pay for. Like that's pretty empowering. And that's the thing I like the most about being a software engineer. Like it's really tough, and it's kind of extreme. Like when you're stuck on a problem and you feel like there's no solution, but then you finally figure it out and you're able to make it work. That feeling is so rewarding, and it feels like you can do anything.
I mean, one thing that many people that I've talked to who are, I guess, wondering if they could even make it in Japan are going, like, when people think about going to Japan, I guess the first things that come to mind are either you go for English teaching or you go for IT. But then for IT, if you don't have any experience, you're not going to get into it. And then the English teaching is a very narrow funnel where with limited opportunities. So it kind of presents like a lot of difficulties when people are only like, I guess, seeing like the path to Japan is only these two options. But there are a lot of other options out here, like you mentioned, especially a lot of people who may not initially be in software development and want to go for it. So I guess after like doing this journey yourself, going to Japan with going for a language school, and then eventually finding this software development and through Chrysalis, how viable do you think it is as a path to getting a job, a career in Japan?
It's totally an option. Totally an option. Yeah. And I do think that is a misconception about Japan, that you can only teach English here. Yeah. And I actually thought the same thing too. When I was here, like I had no idea like there were coding boot camps. I didn't even consider that to be an option living here. But I'm glad that I ran into it and saw it in the flesh, you know? But yeah, there's a handful of my cohort mates actually, like they hadn't even been to Japan before. Like they moved here for the boot camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think their reasoning is, well, they like Japan, but then another selling factor for them was that a lot of the boot camps in the US, especially in the Bay Area, are extremely expensive. And Chrysalis is a lot more affordable. If you can get yourself here, it's kind of worth it, you know? It's like in terms of the money that you save, because they have like really good job outcomes as well. So Yeah, and a lot of them don't speak Japanese. But now we're working here as software engineers and taking Japanese lessons like after work. So that is an option, and it's really cool. That's why I love Code Chrysalis for that, because they're kind of funneling like a healthier tech culture here. Because the company itself, like one reason why I really like them is, and they stand out in terms of the other coding boot camps here and in the US, is that they focus on communication and autonomy. And what I mean by communication is just being able to verbalize the code that you're writing in a way that other engineers can understand, but in another way that you can like mentor new engineers that might not know as much as you, and that is just great for team collaboration and just bringing like teams together, whether or not you work on the technical side or on the marketing side or on like the product design side. And I do really love that about Code Chrysalis. Yeah.
And I think one thing I wanted to ask was, you said you didn't really job hunt that much. So did your company just recruit you right out of the bootcamp?
Yeah. So I guess I'm one of those people.
And was there any like Japanese required for that interview or job initially?
No. I mean, so Code Chrysalis, they have there is an English boot camp that is in English, and there's one in Japanese as well. And so I'm actually not on the immersive side at all. I actually didn't become a teacher. I was a software engineer. I just do software engineering there. So I don't. Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a different case then.
I guess throughout this entire experience, what's one area do you feel like that you've kind of grown after kind of just grinding out 3 months straight, kind of in the trenches?
One way that I've grown after Code Chrysalis, I think the biggest lesson that Code Chrysalis taught me is just being comfortable with being uncomfortable. One of the biggest lessons I think as a software engineer is that there is just so much you don't know, and there's no possible way you can wrap your mind around every single detail that's out there. Most of the times to get the job done, you need to kind of figure out what you need to know to get there. And there's a little bit of a conjuring mindset where, okay, what are the important pieces that I have to pick out of this documentation? Or, what things can I install to like get the job done? Or like, what are the, pros and cons of using, this route versus the other? And just being comfortable with that process and being patient with that, and making decisions in a way that causes high impact is the best route. So to bring myself back to the question, to answer the question that you asked, just being comfortable with the process. Yes, so that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, and I mean, now you're a full-fledged software engineer, right, in the career itself. So how are you enjoying that life now?
Full-fledged.
Full-fledged. All the way from the Bay Area.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I'm still new, okay? Like, just there's a lot. Do I know what I'm talking about? That's the question. Like, I think I think all of us don't know what we're talking about. We're figuring it out as we go along. I think that applies to everyone in every job position. And I recognize kind of the position I'm at, and where I need to be to, to get further in my career and improve. And I'm okay with that. So I'm okay with being a junior developer. And I know what steps I need to take to improve my skills and what I need to work on. And I think as long as you can look at yourself and your trajectory and see that you are improving, that is the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, improvement is that's what matters at the end of the day. It can be small and you don't really see the day to day, but once you kind of look long term, you can kind of see where you've come from. I'm sure that entire year for you, as hectic as it may have been, you went from, I guess, minimal coding experience to all the way to a junior developer, and that must have been an amazing experience, all said and done. And I guess it's for anyone out there to make sure just go and just take small steps to getting towards improvement and see what the outcome is. But I guess now you're a junior developer and you kind of overcame, I guess, the initial challenges that the boot camp provided, and you, like you said, became comfortable with being uncomfortable and kind of took those challenges head on, grew from them. So I guess now with your current position, what are your goals moving forward from here? What is, I guess, the future of Steffie Harner?
What is the future of Steffie Harner? Okay, so I'll let you in on my little, not my secret. It's not really a secret. When I applied to the boot camp, I had kind of a crazy idea. I still kind of feel crazy when I say it. But in my application, when it says, why are you joining the 3-month JavaScript immersive, I wrote, I want to be a cyberpunk software engineer influencer. And it's kind of, yeah, I know it's just a weird statement, but the idea behind that is I kind of want to be this alternative role model for other girls to break stigmas and show that, you can be a software engineer if you want to. You can be a model and software engineer if you want to. You just need to try. Just because there's not really someone else doing that right now doesn't mean that you can't do it. And I kind of want to be the same figure that Yan was to me in that moment, where she broke my idea of what a software engineer is supposed to be and inspired me to do that as well. So even though I'm doing this in a kind of alternative way, in my own kind of artistic way, I guess. But if my crazy image or the things that I do can get someone even a little bit interested or intrigued with oh, coding, I can try it. If if Steffie can do it, I can try it. That is my goal, actually.
Yeah, I mean, innovation always starts with different, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited for the future, and I mean, everyone will be able to see Steffie's links in the description, so be sure to check those out to see everything upcoming. But I guess kind of closing out here, I guess for maybe anyone who is in maybe a different country, really interested in going to Japan to working and I guess maybe taking a similar journey as you, what's maybe one bit of advice that you may have for them?
My advice is be open, be adaptive, life's going to throw you a bunch of curveballs, right? It's not going to be easy. But every situation is what you make of it, right? And you can choose to focus on the negative, or you could choose to, focus on the positive, or you can choose to take what is given to you and run with it and make something of it. And doing that really can take you so far. So yeah, if any of you want to move to Japan, just be open to trying things out. The worst thing that can happen is that you try it and you don't like it, and now you don't like it, so you can try something else. So if you have the idea of moving here, or you think about moving to Japan and you want to see what life is like here, just read about it or talk to someone about it, or ask people how they did it and see if that's something that you can try too. Don't be scared, because I really believe that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's more of acting in spite of fear. So just have the courage to say yes to something and try it out, and you can make your dreams come true. And I know that's super corny, but that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, well said. Excellent words of advice by Steffie. But on that note, I think it's a good point to end the podcast here. Thank you so much, Steffie, for coming on. It was wonderful having you on, having a great conversation, learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners learned a lot too. So again, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, please be sure to check out Steffie's links in the description. She has a lot coming up here, and we really want you to check her out. So please go and do that. And I would say usually we always have this thing that we do at the end where we have our guests give special message to the KoreKara listeners. So we were wondering what your message was today, Steffie.
What do you all think of vaporwave mukbang? Is that a concept in your mind?
Well, you heard Steffie, guys. Comment below.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it does sound pretty interesting, especially when boba's involved. That really, that elevates it every time. Makes it S tier in my book. Hey guys, thanks for listening and getting to the end of the podcast. If you made it this far, let us know in the comments who you would like to see on the podcast next. Also, make sure to go check out Steffie on Instagram and stay up to date with her latest content. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys' comments. Remember, we actually do read every single comment. So that's going to be it for me. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.